Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is my first interview with one of my favorite clients. Claire, welcome.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about the process of changing careers. There's so many people out there right now dealing with burnout, getting to the place where they don't feel any meaning or purpose in their work and trying to figure out what's next. So Claire's a living example of how that can go well. And so we're just going to have a discussion about this, hopefully give you some ideas about what you can do and maybe what you're feeling right now in this
Wonderful.
experience. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, it's great. So, talking about the experience that you had before you left work and kind of what you felt in yourself, in your being around the work that you were doing.
Yeah, so my background is I was in financial services straight from uni, worked there for 12 years, and I'd say approaching the end of my time there is when I started to feel, I didn't use the word burnout at the time, but what I know now is that's what was happening. So I think I was close to burnout. Um, I would describe my experience as I felt like I just couldn't stop. So it was this continual feeling of never being done, like this never ending to-do list and a constant pressure, a feeling I wasn't doing anything well enough as well as I wanted to do it. So I was always falling short of some expectation I had of myself. And I felt like I was failing at home as well. So at the time when I reached the end of that, I had two young children at home. I was married, and I felt like I was barely there. Even when I was there, I wasn't really there
Yeah.
in myself. So that that feeling was it was all consuming. That's another word I'd use to describe it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I think when we talk about getting to the place of burnout or feeling overwhelmed at work and wondering, is this all there is? I often think about it as having so many tasks, just as you're describing, like there's just a long to do list that never ends, and the pressure just doesn't let up, right? And that level of stress in our brains really shuts down our prefrontal cortex. And
Mm.
so it can feel like your memory isn't working, you have foggy brain, you can't manage just normal activities. I find people are really reactive in
Mhm.
that place where something happens and just a little thing, but it's added to this stress level and they just explode or feel depressed and like kind of like you're underwater all the time is the feeling, the metaphor that I think about. And it really is this piece about our brains that if there's too little stress or too much stress, then we really can't function well. We can't dream. We can't think about what's the next thing that we want to do.
Yeah.
So it's important when we're talking about this to realize that finding that balance between the tasks and resting your brain is really important. So it's like the least likely thing for us to do is to take time for ourselves, but coming up with some strategies on how to lower that stress level is really important. And I
Yeah.
think that you spoke about that a little bit. Do you want to say what you did?
Yeah. Well, I one of the things that really helped me at the time, and continues to as well, is so after financial services, I did move to a role that I believe that would give me some more headspace. It
Yeah.
also felt more meaningful. I went to a non-profit. It was closer to home. So there were some very logistical pieces that helped. So cutting my commute down, for example, things like that. But I did reach a similar, if not worse, place there as well, which showed me actually it's not always about where you are. It's
Right.
about how you're seeing it. Also, it might be the nature of the work, but I believe that things started to change for me, and I didn't do this consciously. It wasn't because I was working with a coach at the time, but when I did start to prioritize what brings me joy, and I started taking a weekly dance class. That was one thing that I did, and I genuinely believe that And I didn't understand the neuroscience at the time.
Yeah.
But it started to change. It did start to change something. It started to change how I was experiencing my very stressful role. We were going through a merger. There was going to be lots of restructures. I was in charge of the whole HR agenda. It was, and there was a lot going on in my personal life as well. So I was going through a divorce at the same time. So
Wow.
when you on paper you think, oh, the last thing you want to do is, did I have time to do that?
Yeah.
You could argue no, but something called me to do that. And I do believe just giving myself that thing once a week for a couple of hours gave me access to different resources. And I did start to realize, oh, I can take a little bit more time during the day for myself. So I can have 45 minutes to have something to eat in the middle of the day.
Hey. Yeah.
And I can block time out during the day to not be in meetings, for example.
Yeah.
So that I can have some headspace. And when I started to do that, I started to get clarity on what I might want to do next.
Yeah. I love what you're speaking
Yeah.
to, because when you do find that balance between the, you know, being too stressed and being not stressed enough, right? We get into this place where there's a little bit of flow, and that's the state that we're looking for. And
Yeah.
some of the things that really help with this, and I know you're going to talk about this one piece for sure, is building meaningful relationships. So leaning into friendships, leaning into professional relationships, but genuinely, like people that you want to know, and having those great conversations, having fun,
Mhm.
right? That really rests our brain. And also taking a walk, meditating, all of these things sort of bring us into this balance place. And again, this is not an easy fix, right? This is not like, oh, yes, let me go meditate when I'm feeling super stressed. But anything that we can do to sort of move our bodies or do something that rests our brain will help with these ideas. And I think we've all had that experience where you take a break from it and suddenly ideas start to come.
Yeah.
And as you said, moving towards something that's more meaningful, more purposeful in your life. We all have some pull if we get quiet enough to like, what do I really like about this job, or what could I be doing
Mm.
that brings me joy, and
Yeah.
start to do those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've mentioned the word joy there. There's something about following that thread,
Mhm.
whether that be because when I started dancing, I had tried meditating. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I sat there and I, I'd heard and read that this can really help with stress, and I couldn't. But interestingly, when I started to dance, I found that I could sit and do some mindful breathing for a few minutes, and it did help me. So
Yeah.
I think there's something about follow rather than, for anyone listening to this, really follow what feels joyful to you. And also in your current work situation, whatever that is, if you're leading a team, for example, and you love one-to-one connection with people and developing people, and you have all this other parts of your job you enjoy less, dial up the bit you do enjoy, really take the nourishment you can from that, because it's likely that, again, that's clues. I mean, I'm using that as an example because that is what it was for me. It won't be the same for everyone, but I didn't know at the time I was going to go into, I was going to become a coach and a leadership development professional. But looking back, it made complete sense. But I do remember thinking, well, those, I'm going to really dial up those parts of my role. Those were the parts I was best at. And this is all information, the energy, the sense of aliveness, sense of joy. It's all data to
Yeah. Yeah.
inform what
Yeah.
we might do next.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it helps to get to know yourself better. Like, what are those things that bring me joy? It doesn't have to be something that you're going to monetize for work, but just, okay,
Yeah.
let's start doing them, and then more
Yeah.
ideas come from
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely.
And I think the next part I want to talk to you about, Claire, because I know this was also sort of a stage that you went through where, um, people think, I don't know where to start, or some magical thing is going to happen where I just figure it out. And really, it's going to be some work. And again, partly, if I can explain how the brain works, right? We're sort of wired to stay where we are. And every time we step outside our comfort zone, we hear from those inner critic voices that it's scary and get back in the box. And, how are you going to make money? There's so many things we say to ourselves about making change. And so to just normalize that that's every human being has this. It's like the software that comes with us is a human being, and being able to recognize those voices versus your authentic voice is really important.
Mm.
Um, so one of the things that you did that I know was uncomfortable was to just start reaching out to people. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I did realize that I wanted to, my first step was I thought I'm gonna create a freelance career for myself. I'm going to take the skills I have, set up my own consultancy just on my own and work for different organizations. That felt like a really meaningful first step. And yeah, when it was great when I was making my website and doing all that good stuff, all the stuff I could do hiding behind the screen.
Yeah.
But of course, things really started to happen for me when I started reaching out to people. And it was also the bit I did find uncomfortable, because when you declare to someone else, another human, look, this is what I'm doing, and this is how I can help, this is what I bring. But what I did make it easy on myself. I thought, okay, this was never about cold calling people or doing anything like that. I literally sat down and wrote a list of, okay, who are the people I've really enjoyed working with in my career? Who are the people that I I believe will be interested and may know people and will want to support me in some way, whether they have contacts directly, whether they have a need directly or not. Just them knowing can only be a good thing. So it was that really coming from that place of believing people wanted to help and support, and also believing that people would want to kind of amplify what I was trying to do. They had respect for what I'd done, the work we'd done together, things like that. So so I had lots of conversations. I met people for coffee, and I gave myself permission to do that. I think I wasn't doing it proactively before I had made this internal decision that I wanted to resign. But once I'd made that decision, I didn't feel guilty about, because I think there's something about, well, can I do that in work time, etc. And I thought, you know what, I've probably worked enough hours to take 6 months paid time off in lieu here. So I am going to book a coffee in the middle of the day in London, get the train, go and meet this contact. I'm going to reconnect with them. And I always as well came from a place of genuinely reconnecting with them, finding out about what they've been doing. And LinkedIn is so great for this, because you can just ping someone a message and say, look, do you fancy meeting for a coffee? And I actually think it's even easier now, because
Yeah.
everyone's open to doing virtual coffees. So
Yeah.
you can do that in the middle of the day without actually having to take hours out of your day. And I never had anyone say no. Everyone was very open to it. And after a number of conversations, one day somebody said, oh, Claire, you wouldn't help me out, would you? We've got this big change program happening, and I think, yeah, your skills would be an ideal fit. And then that was my first client. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I often see people who are in a really stressful situation do what you did. I call it like the bridge job, right? Wait, so you go, okay, I'm going to try and make this leap to something that's a little more meaningful and gives me some sense of purpose,
Yes.
even though I know it may not be it,
Yes.
right? But it'll lower my stress level, and then I'll have time and I'll have energy to reach out to people. So
Yeah.
it does take some bravery and some courage to do that. Often when I bring this up to clients, they're like, absolutely can't, what? I have to ask people for help. But honestly, if you just turn the tables, right? We
Yeah.
often want to help other people, right? And if someone's too busy, they'll let you know they're too busy.
Yeah.
But really, it's a huge honor to be asked for help
Yeah.
in a situation.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's like, I know I take great delight in introducing people I know to one another.
Yeah.
It's that when someone's reaching out to me, to me it's fun. It's like
Yeah.
matchmaking or
It
something.
is, isn't it?
It's lovely to connect people, and that to me is what really meaningful networking is. It's that people want to give, and
Yeah.
we have to be willing to put ourselves in a position where we can receive as well. So I think of all the things that I've done and continue to do, that meaningful sort of heart-led networking is really right up there. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah. And I also love that you started with people that you really had a good connection with
Yeah.
and you admired and they admired you. And there's just this, nice give and take with that. It doesn't have to be, like you said, cold calls that don't
No,
always feel so lovely.
I've never done that ever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think I
no,
have either. So,
well, I've never had to, and it's that,
yeah,
the referral, word of mouth. I think this applies whether you're looking for a different job or whether you work for yourself.
absolutely.
Yeah, there's this kind of ecosystem that we're part of. So, but yeah, and we've got the technology to really tap into it. So yeah.
That's beautiful. Let's keep going. So the next phase is having your own business. So this is something I see with a lot of people. I work through a whole process with people to help them understand who they are, what their personality is, what their values are, what kind of work they want to do, how they want to contribute. And then you have to go out into the world of work and see if it exists. And oftentimes it does not exist. So that means you create it from your own creativity and motivations. So talk a little bit about how you did that piece of
Yeah.
it.
So my journey has been, because I grew up, my career grew up in the corporate world. For me, the natural place for me to bring my gifts, bring my talents, when I realized I did want to become a coach, I did my coach training, was to work with people in that environment. So it was a very intuitive decision. And again, for my network, this work came relatively easily once I started, once I had the skills and I built that. I think what's true for me is that it's been this kind of wiggly journey. So I started off doing HR consultancy. I built up some money to invest in my coach training. When I did that, and I was, that experience made me realize, yes, I definitely want to do this. I want to stop on my HR work. But I'm the primary income earner in my household. So it wasn't an option for me just to stop. And I don't think that would have been the best thing anyway. So I did take a part-time job with one of my clients. I actually joined their payroll in a similar job to what I've been doing previously, but in a job share. So it was me and another woman. I worked 2 days a week. She worked 3 days a week whilst I did my certification, started to build my client base. And then when I felt ready, I resigned from that. And they always knew, that I was never going to be there for ages. And then that was probably the scariest leap.
Yeah.
But I did it when I felt, I was ready. And then it has been, there's a lot of experimentation involved. And again, different income streams, different ways of working. So I do some associate work where I'm delivering for bigger coaching providers. I have my own direct work with organizational clients. I have some people working directly with me, but I've always been open to whatever opportunities come along. It's been rare that I just discount them out of hand. They may not be perfect. The pay may not be perfect. The setup may not be perfect. It may not be the ideal, perfect type coaching work that I would ideally do. I've always found whatever I've said yes to, there's been learning, and then it's led me to do other pieces. So, for example, I first did group coaching work with a bigger provider, and they had a great framework around that, and it helped me build my confidence with that format.
Nice.
And then when I felt ready, I launched my own group program and started marketing that. But I'm not sure I would have done that if I hadn't built that experience. So there's something I think about being open to these different pieces, and that helps you feel into what you really enjoy and what you want to do more of. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much because I often talk to people about having different streams of income when you're self-employed. It just helps really makes you sleep at night. You can still pay the mortgage,
Yeah.
those kind of things. So, and it does take time to build those things and to try and experiment
Yeah.
and not to be afraid to do that, even if it's something that isn't directly related. I know when I went through a lot of things where maybe at the end of them, I thought, okay, that's not probably where I want to land in
Yeah.
terms of my work. But, I did gain confidence and move forward from it and relationships again
Yes.
building
Yeah.
those relationships and getting the word out about you. I think that's always, just an easy way to kind of build your business is to have
Yes.
people see you in action
Yeah.
because you love what you're doing, you're passionate about it, and then people feel that and they want to talk about you. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're building experience and you're building confidence. So it's all valuable. Yeah.
That's great.
But yeah, that reminds me, just that piece of being open to different formats, different levels of income, from these different pieces, is, I think, a mindset piece around that. I've done a lot of work on my own money mindset.
Yeah.
If I had held the belief I will only leap if I can earn exactly what I was earning before, I'd still be in financial services,
Yeah.
because there was the pay there was great. It was amazing. And
Mhm.
yes, I had built a life around that. But what I found was that when I really looked at, was this really making me happy? It wasn't.
Mhm.
So when when I've made decisions since then, for example, when I bought my house after my divorce, I could have borrowed more money than I did from
Mhm.
the bank. But I purposely didn't do that. I purposely got a smaller, probably smaller than I would have ideally liked. But the thought of having that financial headspace,
Yeah.
of all the decisions I've made, that is, I'd say, one of the most liberating decisions I've ever made. And I absolutely love my house now. And because actually it means that I've been able to, I can do work that I really love, and I don't have to work
Yeah.
as much as I used to. So I think, but I never, looking back on my younger self, that was out of the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I
Um,
understand that. Yeah.
yeah,
I think it's a great thing to speak about, like when you're changing, it's a lifestyle change. It's not
yes,
just a job change,
yeah,
because what we do for a living affects everything about our lives.
yeah.
And so we can make different decisions that align with our purpose. And my cat's going to come say hi.
Ah,
That's Toby for all of you. So, yeah, it's beautiful. And I think that also comes again from understanding yourself and your values and what's really important to you and how do you want to live your life? That's a really big question these
yeah,
days.
yeah,
I think a lot after COVID, people are realizing, it's not like 50% work and then 50% I fit in the rest of my life. It's some blend that you can create in a good way for
yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
Tell me where you are now. What would
Yes.
you say?
So this whole, I really think this is, it's a journey that just continues, because what I've realized in our recent work together over the past year or so is that, and this happened because I really started to put myself out there in quote marks with my own marketing. So I started writing. I started writing about my work. I started writing pieces that I believe would help uh, people, similar to what I experience, what we're talking about now, people who feel burnout or lack meaning. And I rediscovered that I love to write. And that was because of work that I discovered that. But what I've realized recently is that I love writing for writing's sake. So what is really is, and it's in a very tender early stage for me, is that, I do describe myself now as a writer because I write every day. So most days I start by writing, and often that has nothing to do with my work. So I've just created a new space on Substack. It's called Glitter and Biscuits, where I write about my experiences as a woman, as a mother, as a human, all the different parts that entails. So it's kind of short form memoir. That's what I love to write. And I'm also writing a book length memoir as well about my journey with dance. And this has nothing directly to do with my corporate work, because my work is very much, I'm working in the corporate world. And I don't know where this will lead me, but I'm following the joy. And yeah, I'm getting little goosebumps
I
as I
get so
talk
good
about
too.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Right.
because I never dreamed, even 3 or 4 years ago, that I would, this is giving me even deeper meaning than I thought was possible. And I feel like, perhaps this is the next level of what's calling me. It feels like a deeper soul calling. And yeah, and it's not about, it's not about making money. Who knows, it may lead to that in the future, but this is about my creativity and about allowing that part of me, because what I didn't say at the beginning of our call is that, before I went into the corporate world, I was a very artistic person. I did a music degree. I used to dance. I did used to write when I was a girl. I used to write poetry, and I used to write to newspapers and express how I felt about different things, and all of that. I just didn't have time or space for any of that. So having work that nourishes me, as my coaching work does, having headspace, not running around 100 miles an hour, I think has allowed this other part to start to emerge, which is completely unexpected. And I feel very excited and intrigued about, where that takes me.
And I just have to say what a brilliant writer you are, and how nourishing it is to even read. The way that you write is so delicious. So we'll put a link so people can find you there as well. Thank you so much for this time, Claire. It's really been a joy to talk to you about it. I get also chills just from the fulfillment of knowing, yeah, you're doing what you need to be doing in the world. And obviously my cat is excited about it too. So I'm excited to come say hello. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh no, you're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Super.